If I never was, I obviously played that game in Connecticut, and that's where I kind of felt some more pain in my...
Mitchell couldn't handle it. Or, at least, that's what people watching from the outside wanted to believe. But the truth is far more complicated. Mitchell gets it back. Mitchell with the steal. Mitchell drives inside. For years those calls echoed through arenas that were often half empty. For years the name Kelsey Mitchell carried the weight of an entire franchise on her shoulders. And now, with a single decision, one signature she refused to give, the entire Indiana Fever organization finds itself standing on the edge of uncertainty. When Mitchell rejected the offer, she didn't hesitate. Not for a second. No long negotiations. No dramatic press conference. Just silence, and then the message everyone feared. No. And suddenly the Fever's carefully constructed future began to shake. Because Mitchell was never just another player in Indiana. She was the one who stayed when everyone else quietly disappeared. She was there during the years when losing felt permanent, when rebuilding felt endless, when fans stopped believing the franchise would ever find its way back to relevance. Long before the cameras returned to Indiana, long before the sold-out crowds and national broadcasts, Mitchell was the one keeping the franchise alive. The story begins in 2018. The Fever selected Mitchell with the second overall pick in the WNBA draft after her legendary college career at Ohio State. She arrived in Indianapolis as a young guard from Cincinnati, just 2 hours from home, stepping into a situation that very few young players would ever choose willingly. The team was struggling. The roster was unstable. The direction of the franchise was uncertain. And the expectations were heavy. But Mitchell didn't complain. She didn't run. She didn't look for an exit. Instead, she went to work. Season after season, loss after loss, she kept showing up. 7 years. 7 long seasons without a playoff appearance. Think about that for a moment. 7 seasons is not just a difficult stretch in professional sports, it is an entire era of a player's career. Many WNBA careers don't even last that long. Yet Mitchell spent every one of those years wearing the Fever jersey, scoring points, fighting through losing seasons, and representing a franchise that often seemed stuck in a permanent rebuild. Night after night, she carried the offense. 16 points per game on average through those difficult years. Over 200 games started. Dozens of nights where she scored 30 points only to watch the team walk off the floor with another loss. But she stayed. Not because she had to, because she believed something better could eventually come. Inside the locker room, coaches described her as the emotional anchor of the team. The player who showed younger teammates how to keep competing even when the standings said the season was already lost. Leadership like that rarely shows up in highlight reels. It doesn't trend on social media. But every successful franchise in sports history has relied on someone like that, the player who holds everything together when things are falling apart. For the Fever, that player was Mitchell. She was the foundation, even before anyone knew what the future would look like. And then everything changed. The year was 2025. And the moment that altered the course of the entire franchise arrived in the form of a rookie, Caitlin Clark. Almost overnight, the Fever became the center of the basketball world. Arenas that once struggled to fill seats suddenly sold out within minutes. Television cameras that rarely pointed toward Indiana now followed every game. Merchandise sales exploded. Media coverage intensified. The WNBA had found its newest superstar. And suddenly the Fever were no longer an afterthought. They were the most talked about team in women's basketball. For many veteran players, a moment like this can feel threatening. A young superstar arrives and the narrative of the franchise shifts completely. But Mitchell didn't fade into the background. She elevated her game. In fact, she delivered the best season of her professional career. 20 points per game. Nearly 40% shooting from 3. Elite scoring numbers that placed her among the most dangerous offensive players in the entire league. She earned all WNBA first-team honors. Her teammate Aaliyah Boston was named to the second team. For the first time in franchise history, 2 Fever players appeared on the All-WNBA lists in the same season. It was a moment that symbolized something the franchise had not experienced in years. Hope. But the story wasn't perfect. Because even during this breakout season, adversity returned. Clark missed significant time due to injury. The spotlight dimmed slightly. And once again, Mitchell was forced to carry the offense during long, exhausting stretches of the schedule. She played every single regular season game, all 44. Even after battling a terrifying medical condition known as rhabdomyolysis, a dangerous muscle breakdown that can threaten an athlete's entire career. For many players, that diagnosis would have ended the season. For Mitchell, it became another obstacle to push through. She returned to the court. She kept playing. And when the Fever's playoff run ended, Mitchell admitted something rare for professional athletes.
She cried.
Not because of her personal statistics, because she believed the team had lost an opportunity to do something special. That level of emotional investment cannot be manufactured. It only exists when a player truly loves the franchise she represents. Which is exactly why what happened next shocked so many people across the league. When the 2025 season ended, Mitchell's contract expired. Normally, free agency would follow a predictable pattern. Negotiations, offers, agreements. But the WNBA was entering one of the most complicated off-seasons in its history. The collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players' union had also expired. And without a new CBA in place, the entire financial structure of the league was suddenly uncertain. Under the existing rules, the Fever had the option to issue Mitchell a core qualifying offer. A contract that would guarantee her roughly $250,000 while giving the team exclusive negotiating rights. On the surface, it looked like a strong offer. But there was a catch. The proposed new CBA, still under negotiation, could increase the Supermax salary to more than $1 million per year. That difference is enormous. For an athlete with a limited career window, it represents the difference between a comfortable career and generational financial security. And the players' union delivered a clear message. Do not sign early. Wait for the new deal. So Mitchell waited. And the Fever waited. And suddenly the franchise found itself in a position it had never imagined. Because the player who had stayed loyal for 8 seasons, the player who had carried the team through its darkest years, was now standing at a crossroads. If Indiana wants to keep Mitchell under the new salary structure, they may have to offer a contract exceeding $1 million per year. The woman who once carried the franchise when no one was watching, now waiting to see if the organization will fight to keep her when the spotlight is finally shining. Because sometimes the most important decisions in sports are not made on the court. They are made in quiet rooms during negotiations when loyalty, money, and the future collide. And right now, the future of the Indiana Fever may depend on which choice comes next. But the roster already includes other rising stars.
Clark, Boston.
And a salary cap that limits total spending. Every dollar committed to one player changes the future of the entire team. Pay Mitchell the Supermax, and the Fever may struggle to build depth. Let her walk, and they risk losing the very player who helped make the current success possible. It's the kind of decision that defines franchises. Inside the locker room, the silence has been noticeable. Fans are divided. Some believe the team must prioritize its new superstar era. Others believe Mitchell deserves every dollar for the loyalty she showed during the losing years. And somewhere in the middle of that debate stands Mitchell herself. And then there is the other side of the story. The side that makes this entire situation even more complicated. Because while the spotlight in Indianapolis is shining brighter than it has in years, the financial reality behind the scenes is tightening like a vice around the front office of the Indiana Fever. At the center of that reality stands the most famous rookie in the history of women's basketball, Caitlin Clark. Clark's arrival transformed the Fever overnight. Attendance exploded. Television ratings soared. Jerseys sold across the country. For the first time in years, Indiana basketball became the center of the sports conversation. But with that transformation comes an unavoidable truth that every front office eventually has to face.
Superstars are not cheap.
Clark is currently playing under her rookie-scale contract, a standard agreement that all young players sign when they enter the league. It's a deal designed to protect teams early in a player's career, but it never lasts forever. Eventually, that contract expires. And when that day arrives, Clark will not just become another free agent. She will become the most valuable player on the open market in the entire sport. Industry insiders already believe that when the time comes, Clark could command the largest supermax contract in the history of the WNBA. The numbers being discussed are staggering. According to reporting from front office sports journalist Annie Costabile, the financial math facing Indiana is already becoming extremely tight. If the Fever decide to offer Kelsey Mitchell the projected new supermax salary of approximately $13 million, that single contract would immediately consume nearly 20% of the entire team's salary cap. Then you add the guaranteed salary commitments for Clark and fellow cornerstone Aaliyah Boston, which together total roughly $1.08 million. Suddenly, the numbers begin to tell a very uncomfortable story. 3 players, more than $2 million committed, and a roster that still needs 9 additional players. Under the league's current salary cap proposal of approximately $5.65 million, the Fever would be left with just over $3.04 million to fill the rest of their team. 9 roster spots, 9 professional athletes, 9 players who must help support a championship run. When you divide the remaining cap space evenly, that comes out to roughly $382,000 per player. At first glance, that might sound reasonable. But there's a problem. Under the proposed new collective bargaining agreement, the average WNBA salary is expected to climb closer to $475,000 per player. That means the Fever would be asking most of their roster to accept contracts significantly below the league average. And that's where the tension truly begins. Because building a championship team is not just about having 2 or 3 stars. It's about depth. It's about role players. It's about defenders, shooters, and veterans who know how to win when the pressure rises in the playoffs. You cannot simply fill those roles with rookies earning minimum deals and expect to compete for a title. You cannot replace energy players like Sophie Cunningham with an inexperienced rookie and expect the same toughness. You cannot replicate the defensive presence of Lexi Hall with someone picked up from the waiver wire. The Fever front office knows this.
Mitchell knows this.
And the tension between what she deserves and what the franchise can realistically afford is the true reason Indianapolis suddenly feels like it is standing in the middle of a storm. But the situation is even bigger than one contract dispute. Because the entire WNBA is currently navigating one of the most uncertain labor negotiations in its history. The collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players' union expired at the end of October 2025. Since then, both sides have been locked in difficult negotiations that could reshape the entire economic structure of the sport. The Women's National Basketball Players Association initially pushed for players to receive 50% of league revenue, a figure similar to what NBA players receive. Owners pushed back hard. In recent weeks, the union lowered its demand to 27.5% of total revenue, offering what they believed was a reasonable compromise. But even that proposal still sits far apart from what league owners are currently willing to accept. The WNBA has proposed a salary cap of $5.65 million. The players' union has countered with a proposal closer to $9.05 million. That gap is enormous. And it represents something deeper than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It represents a philosophical divide between players who believe the league's explosive growth should translate into significantly higher salaries and owners who are still cautious about how quickly those increases should happen. If negotiations stall, there is a real possibility of a lockout, a situation where owners shut down league operations entirely until a new agreement is reached. Players like Nafisa Collier, a vice president of the Players Association, have expressed optimism that a deal will eventually be reached before the season begins. But the timeline is tight, and the margin for error is dangerously thin. For Mitchell personally, that uncertainty has created a situation that even she admits feels unsettling. During an appearance on a podcast hosted by WNBA legend Lisa Leslie, Mitchell spoke openly about what it feels like to exist in this strange moment where the future of the league and her own career remains unresolved. She didn't try to hide her emotions. Instead, she used a word that sent a ripple of concern through Fever fans everywhere.
Scary.
She said it plainly. She said it twice. None of us knows what our future holds, and that's scary. This wasn't a young player unfamiliar with the business side of sports. This was a 30-year-old veteran who has spent nearly a decade navigating the realities of professional basketball. Players with that level of experience choose their words carefully. And when Mitchell used the word scary, it sounded less like casual conversation and more like a warning signal. Because uncertainty at this level does not just affect negotiations. It affects everything.
Sleep.
Training, focus, even loyalty. Inside the locker room of the off-season team she was playing with, many of the athletes shared the same anxiety. Established WNBA stars, veteran professionals, players who normally enter a season with clear contracts and defined roles. Now, all of them were waiting to learn where they would play, waiting to see what their salaries would be, waiting for a deal that might redefine the financial future of the entire league. That kind of collective uncertainty lingers in the background of every conversation. And it inevitably opens the door to something dangerous for the Fever. Other teams. Because every day Mitchell remains unsigned is another day rival franchises quietly monitor the situation. Another day where general managers pick up the phone. Another day where offers, real offers with real numbers attached, begin to circulate. Inside the Fever organization, the support for Mitchell remains strong. Head coach Stephanie White has repeatedly stated that re-signing Mitchell is the top priority of the offseason. Team executives have praised the chemistry between Clark and Mitchell, calling their backcourt one of the most exciting offensive pairings in the entire league. Reports suggest that both Clark and Boston have privately communicated their desire to keep Mitchell in Indiana. The respect is genuine. The appreciation is real. But admiration alone does not finalize contracts. Words do not pay salaries. Compliments do not replace financial commitment. And Mitchell, after 8 years of loyalty to a franchise that spent most of that time struggling to win games,